Anyway, right, ready when you are.
And we're live for another week, and we're joined once again by my friend Christopher Vogelmann, and we're following up on all of the things we talked about last week. So let's go through the introductions for people who've forgotten who we are in a week. Christopher, introduce yourself.
I am the infamous Dr. Christopher Vogelmann, CEO and President of Epic Wins Systems, an engagement, loyalty, and revenue-increasing company.
Excellent. We got the wrong guest, Lee. Kick him off. Lee, introduce yourself.
And I'm the famous Lee Rickler. I run Point and Stare, which is an online production agency based in North London. It is, 26 degrees here today.
And a mighty struggle with Snowshoe the Hangout Cat, by the way. So.
Yay!
There he is. Give a paw bump.
The audience are happy now.
Yeah, I know.
Right. So last week we discussed a lot of things. Now, the website hadn't changed since the Susie review, so I have absolutely no suspicion in my mind that it's changed in the weeks since.
I checked a while ago, and it has not. It has remained as steady as the Northern Star.
Okay, so obviously the midgets haven't quite got to work on that yet, but you know, maybe it's just a stepladder problem, and it'll be sorted out soon. So one of the big points for me last week was obviously the content is going to have to be engaging, and Scott was talking about the video posts and saying, you know, is it worth having, you know, small video clips as video posts throughout the week?
That's something that I've been thinking about quite a bit. In fact, I've recently hired on a behavioral economist who is had suggested that very thing, which is to do little short snippets, 2 minutes releases of content periodically, and that would give us the opportunity to create bite-sized chunks of content.
Yeah, and it's a great idea. It does introduce fresh content. However, don't expect it to do miracles for SEO. So in terms of drawing people from a YouTube audience, it'll do a little bit, but of course most people on YouTube aren't looking at business stuff. They are doing how-tos, and when you tie into that, or when you're talking about things that they may be doing on YouTube, it's going to work. When you're not, it's not. What you'd probably do is embed that in the site by simply having a page with your latest small snippets in, and maybe doing a weekly roundup blog post which embedded all of the ones for that week. Because what you don't want to be doing is, over the course of each year, adding hundreds of pages which are just video embeds, and they're adding to the amount of site you've got to crawl without giving the search engines anything to actually rank very highly.
Well, would that be true if you're taking those video posts and transcribing them?
Right. Now that's where it starts to get useful, is when you're able to transcribe them all, then you're putting some text on the page.
Okay.
However, unless you've pre-scripted those videos, it's unlikely to be as good as a piece that was designed for writing in the first place. i.e., an article is usually better written. It's written in a different way to you say it, and of course search engines are originally designed to look for written content. So their grammar rules, the way they look at content, is all sort of weighted around writing. Therefore, the pure transcript might not do as well as a written article.
Right. Well, I did hire on someone from New York who is she's worked previously in a software company and has done a lot of work. She even was a radio broadcaster for XM Radio, and she and I have had a good series of conversations and meetups in real life, and she seems to understand my quirky sense of humor and personality and feels quite comfortable writing on my behalf. So, I'm sounding like I'm British now. What's going on here?
Okay, we've got our first audience question here already. What's a behavioural economist? Well, it's the opposite of one that doesn't behave.
Exactly. Well, the behavioral economist, I mean, is similar to behavioral scientists. So this is someone who actually looks at economics and business from a behavior standpoint. You know, why do people buy? how do organizations operate from a psychological perspective, and they, in fact, this fellow, I won't reveal too many things, but does come from an Ivy League institution, from a business school. And there actually is a discipline of behavioral economics.
Cool. Hopefully that's answered, Alexandra. So back to content. The thing is to always be building up a certain amount of presence of ongoing stuff that's going on generally. But you want to then cherry pick that for what you really keep. Don't, have an archive of absolutely everything you ever put up. Anything that's really gained nothing in 6 months is probably worth getting rid of from the site.
And you gauge that based upon the number of comments or shares, or how do you look at the analytics with respect to
I've been looking at the analytics.
Okay.
There's posts that don't get a lot of comments, but they can be driving a third of your traffic, and nobody still comments. Right. So you wouldn't want to get rid of those.
Well, a classic example is I recently, and it's funny, I never posted it on the website yet, in fact, because I was just waiting for the website to be recreated or done over, and it was the gamified traffic light, which got a lot of traction on Google+, but got next to zero anywhere else. Well, actually, it got some traction on Twitter too, which really surprised me. More so than Facebook. So Twitter and Google Plus came out pretty well, with G Plus leading the way. But that's something that I would want to be able to insert those types of videos and make comments, basically curated content, as part of the posting on the website.
Yeah. Right. Kevin's got a question there, which we'll get onto quickly, and it's how search engines index video. Well, at the moment, it's not as advanced as all that. What Google's doing is looking to see if there's a YouTube search match, and YouTube is based partly on file names, especially the title of the video, but also the description. And to a lesser extent, even the comments can, I think, influence it. But certainly, the title and the description are the two biggest factors there. So when you are writing up your descriptions, if you're doing HOAs, to get onto YouTube, make sure you put that description, a good description in there that's got lots of good words, and don't forget to embed links and things like that in it as well, because that way that's going straight onto YouTube as well. Even before the video is up, it's already got some interesting words there. What the thing is that Google is trying to see if does anything on YouTube match this quite closely. It's got so many of the words in it, and if so, which is the top ranked video, and we'll include it in the top 10 search results, so that there is diversity in the search results. We'll get some images in, we'll get some videos in, as well as the standard pages. So it helps with search to have video, because it's pulling from a smaller pool, especially when it's a business topic, and not, there's not that many people still doing business topics on YouTube. And
what about optimizing those YouTube videos? I mean, that what you're talking about with keywords and things of that sort, or you're just saying the description is sufficient?
The title of the video and the description are two of the major parts. If you've also got closed captions, that's believed to help. We know that Google can go through to pull up automated captions, but having seen some of those, it really doesn't do British accents well. I have done a couple of videos, and literally at the end of an hour video, it hasn't got one word correctly. Not even the word the or of is ever picked up right. So if that was what it was using for search, we'd all have no chance whatsoever. So yeah, titles, descriptions, those are the two major parts right now. The thing is that when it's business topics, it's a much smaller pool. There may only be 20 videos on the whole of YouTube about a particular piece of software or a particular business thing, and therefore your chances of ranking at the top of that is much, much higher.
What about the odds of putting YouTube videos into LinkedIn and targeting that way?
You can, yeah. The thing I love about the YouTube videos is that most other social media platforms allow you to embed them.
Okay.
On Twitter, you can embed your video feed as well. So video posts are instantly transportable to any social media as an on that media message, where you couldn't embed a whole blog post or an article or anything like that. So for that, I think it's absolutely superb. But you do need to then make sure you've done things like on your YouTube video, make sure you've got a channel graphic, because that will then give them a way to click through to your whole YouTube channel from your video. That's the little watermark graphic that it puts in. Don't forget to, if it's a recorded video, to have some clickable links in the video if there's anything else you're referring to, especially if you've done a full article on your site and this video is talking about anything that relates to it. Embed the link into your video so people can go straight through and you've now got them on your site, which is where you want them.
And that's just a layer that you put over the video?
Yeah, you can do it through the YouTube tools. It's in the Creator Studio. You'll find the overlays and annotations and those kind of things you can make into a link, and you can then take the traffic from YouTube or from any social media platform where they're playing your video and bang, they're on your site where you can actually interact properly, convert them, get their emails, whatever you want to do with them.
Okay. Great.
Ideally, with any kind of content strategy, you are always ideally bringing them to one hub, one central location, which is usually your own site. Now, grammar matters to search optimization. Unfortunately, my grandma died before YouTube came along, so I never really tested that. Seriously, I haven't found that grammar does a huge amount. The kind of keyword search that's on YouTube is still quite basic. But what will count there is how many plays you've got. Your popularity plays a lot into that. So don't forget, when you're doing videos, don't be ashamed to ask for likes, ask people to subscribe in the video towards the end. If you've liked this, it would really help me if you can, like it or subscribe to my channel. Be honest, it helps you get the message out to other people. Often if people understand why you're doing it, they're quite happy to join in.
Well, it never hurts to ask, too. Just like today, I just put out a share for this event and said, share if you care. So. And suddenly 3 more shares came up. So
exactly, yeah. It's always call to action. Don't forget a call to action. So hold on, let me see. We've got a follow-up from Kevin. Yeah. Kevin says, that's what I thought. I wondered if they were able to search the video material. They are, but it's still dependent on their ability to process it, and you know how much stuff is uploaded per minute. It takes a lot of processing just to decode a video stream. So to decode it, run it through speech recognition, try and adjust for accents. The chances are that Google at the moment really isn't able to do this. I think that's why YouTube's ability to pull out the closed captions to try and automate that is so bad. It just needs more resources than they can throw at it at the moment. In time, thanks to Moore's Law, I think this will get better and better. But right now, the ability to pull the words from the video is limited.
Would you recommend recording videos in another platform, say Vimeo or something else, or using iMovie or Camtasia or so, and then uploading them to YouTube?
Quite often. It depends what software you've got. I mean, one of the things I love XSplit is great for anything I want to do. It records in this format in the first place without any extra setup. If I want to have different camera views, different overlays, different effects, all the things that I regularly, pull up in the show, such as, last week where I'm pulling up your site and able to overlay myself on what I'm talking about as I go through.
By the way, that was not me as a child, so just so that you know.
You say that now.
Just not from the family.
I recognise that bow tie anywhere. That's Mr. Vogelmann.
It looks more like you, Anna.
But the ability to do all of that kind of stuff on the fly means I've got less editing to do afterwards. So one of the things that Mark and Scott often point out is the more you plan ahead with your video, the less you've got to do afterwards, the less cleaning up. The better scripted it is to start, the less you have to fix in the edit. And certainly I find that's very true with XSplit. It allows me to record rather than stream, or it allows me to stream it straight away, and that means there's a lot less to do afterwards. But yeah, I tend to do a little bit of cleanup, a little bit of editing down, get rid of the ums and ahs if I can, and usually put on a start and a tail end to it kind of thing. But other than that, yeah, very little is needed.
I've learned that I'm far better off unscripted than I am trying to script things too much, so perhaps hiring video editors is my best solution.
Yes, yeah, it certainly can be. I know that Scott is very popular with a lot of people. He does a superb job. I mean, I love watching what he does with the Scott treatment, and the things I have seen him fix. I've seen a show where it was blue boxed, and he still managed to take that and do something with it. So, I mean, this is a way of salvaging almost anything. He's very good at his job. Yeah, I heartily recommend using a good video pro. Or you can teach yourself and go down that route. It's not a skill that's going to be wasted. It's not a skill you're not going to use.
Well, isn't that something that Scott had mentioned that was an essential skill in the 21st century, just as typing probably was in the 20th century?
Exactly that. And if you think of how often those typing lessons have paid off since computers came along.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, my 8th grade typing teacher is now my hero.
Yeah.
And is the bane of many people when I go into the comment section under an event. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not going to be a skill that's wasted. However, reality time, a lot of us are very busy. We don't have the time to master it. If this isn't something you can basically take on as a new hobby that will eventually be useful, then...
Well, I could see myself doing it as a hobby sometime, but that's after my business has been built up and sold off. So yeah. That's the key.
So it's another of those decisions, like so many, there's a level of sweat equity. You can save yourself money. If money is your tight point in business, then you can do this yourself. It won't take that long to learn it. You can be up and running in a day, and you can get some very cool effects and be quite used to it after a week of playing with it. After a couple of weeks, you've got enough skill to do a good job. Yeah, true mastery, they always say that's the sort of 10,000 hours thing, isn't it?
Yes, your Malcolm Gladwellism.
That may take a while, but there's plenty of options out there. I know Scott in the past has recommended Lightworks for doing editing work. The free version will work on the YouTube format MP4 videos. It'll only export as MP4s, and it'll only do the 720 pixels, but that's the highest that Hangouts goes to anyway. Full YouTube will go to full 1080. If you build up enough score in your YouTube, and then you can do full high definition video. But
now you said your score. I mean, that's dependent upon number of views and the quality of the content, or how is that judged?
Part of it is just confirming you are who you are, and your Google ID will actually help that. Part of it is putting up videos that do get watched and do get used. It's not a very hard thing to get, but I think it's one of the things you can't necessarily do on day one.
Right.
But other than that, it's a piece of cake. So full video, it can be very worthwhile to learn those skills, but a lot of the time, if your content is good enough right now, that's going to carry a lot. It doesn't have to be brilliant. One of the things that I talk about quite often is how far behind the curve, actually, in a way, Hangouts is. this is wonderful to us. It's all new and exciting. And if you compare it to video conferencing, Hangouts are fantastic. If you want to impress a business, get 2 or 3 people from different countries in one Hangout. That's what they're not used to. They're used to point. Oh, video conferencing, yeah. We've talked to people on video before. But when they suddenly get the idea that people around the world can all be in together, that multiple locations can be connected, and you can use one Hangout to kind of cherry pick brains from around the world, wow. That's when this suddenly goes, oh, I love that.
Yeah, well, that's when you get into sort of the transcontinental transmedia strategy, which is something beyond what most people think of. We think of our own local markets or maybe our particular country, but it takes a bit for people really to expand their mind into realizing that they can have a global business.
Yeah. So, it's one of those things, but do understand, in the early days, editing is going to be time-consuming if you're learning it yourself, whereas outsourcing it to Scott, it's his time it takes. But don't forget, even for somebody like Scott, this isn't a 2-minute operation. It does take time to clean up a video, to really do the work. 1 hour of actual footage can be 6 hours of work to a pro, to really work with. So,
well, there's continuing that balancing act. How much money do I want to spend? How much time do I have? And going back and forth and back and forth. And ultimately, for me, time is of the essence. And as much as I like to save money, I'm finding now that hiring professionals is turning out to be a major time saver.
Yeah. So the same thing is going to apply to all of your content, of course. Now, I'm not a huge fan of outsourcing content, but I'm a big fan of insourcing it, i.e. getting somebody who knows how to write into your business, and that's their job, is to do that kind of communication.
I'm training him to do typing. So. Yeah,
I don't think it's going to work well.
No, okay.
What he'll do though is work out how to order a catnip for himself.
Probably true. A large collection of toys will arrive from Amazon.
Yeah.
You're probably adding too many dramatic pause as well.
Oh no.
I don't say much, but when I do.
Gee whiz, okay.
Yeah, when you do, we wish you were muted. Okay.
I'm going to have nightmares tonight. So. Or night kitties.
We've got a quick comment from Scott here. Whenever I share a 3-minute golden nugget from a HOA, I also append the complete event page details in the text description. Yes. Yeah, it's always worth doing. Certainly, putting a link across to it is always a good thing, because somebody who's been interested in that will want to get involved with the whole thing most of the time, and that's why you pull these nuggets out. If you didn't want to highlight something and get them interested in the full experience, what was the point of the nugget? Sometimes it's a standalone, but often, it's much more about what you can get them to then experience, go for the full thing.
Also puts context around it as well.
Yeah. Anyway, in writing, yeah, same sort of thing. It's best if you can do this yourself. If you can't, the second best is somebody around you who can basically, pump you for ideas and information that they can then write up, but it's still coming from you. It's your voice. It's the inside the company view. Outsourcing your copywriting it's third best. There's some great copywriters out there, don't get me wrong. And if you can take the time to educate them, sometimes they can come up with things that you wouldn't have had the time to, but it's not quite as...
Right. Well, between the person from New York, Jessica Ann of Jessica Ann Media, and Amy Harrison, I mean, I've got two people who have great humor, a great sense of fun, who have deep experience in these things. And if I just interview with them for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we can create a piece of content fairly quickly, and I can still go back and edit whatever they've created. So yeah. I'm looking for ways of maximizing my time.
Absolutely, and one of the core things there is that you've gone for quality right from the start, whereas a lot of small business, of course, it's never mind the quality, feel the price tag.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I'm not going to necessarily be going with somebody from, I mean, I'm not to knock the Philippines because I think that you can get great outsourcing in the Philippines and in India and other places if you're very specific and really define very clearly what you want. But in terms of writing, I would prefer, actually, my prejudice is English speakers and those with an English degree and a background along those lines, because I don't want to deal with issues of syntax and vernacular, and especially in the United States, dealing with the Queen's English versus American English. So.
yeah, in fact, even more than that, colloquialisms and terms of phrase, language is poetic, and
Right.
poetry really does vary by country, and I hear it. It's terrible when you get an Indian or a Philippines outsource, and they completely get that turn of phrase wrong. They think they've caught it, but they haven't, and it just stands out, and you instantly know, wow, this has been outsourced to the lowest possible bidder.
Yeah, or the literal translation from one language to the next, and you're just realizing it just sounds like directions for electronics that have been translated directly from Chinese into English. So.
Yeah, and the very worst thing is there's some high quality looking companies out there that this is all we do great content. When you read it, it's pretty good, but what they do is they do the mass market thing. So they have 50 other businesses like yours, and they take 1 or 2 blog posts a day, and then they tweak them, just changing a few words, and sell them to all 50. But you've got so much duplicate content there, it's ridiculous. You've got nothing original. Your writer, ideally, should not be working for any other business in the space.
Correct. And I think that's where people make the mistake, too. They indulge in, what are the tools, like spinning content, these spinner tools and everything. And they just sound, everything that comes out of a spinner sounds so incredibly awkward and really is not that original whatsoever.
Exactly. You really do want... You really do want to get some differences going there. I love Craig's a literal translation. Pet store becomes fondle shop.
Off to the fondle shop I go after this hangout.
So yeah, and he's not that far off there. I'll tell you, there are some copies out there that's a bit like that, especially when it's being run through something like, Google Translate. Babelfish used to be fun as well. So yeah, when you're outsourcing content, when that's the way you're going, this is the voice of your company. How cheap do you want it to sound? So if you have to outsource copy, find somebody who's as dedicated to this, who is going to be a literal voice for your company, and therefore it's not the same as stock images that I've seen on every other site. Stock.
Well, in fact, that's a very good point when you talk about stock images, stock content as far as writing goes. But stock images really bother me. I would much rather have a few photos taken with my iPhone than be using some stock image, mainly because you never know where that image is going to pop up when you buy it from iStock Photo or some other source. Even Getty, for example, could be used in 12 other magazines out there.
Yes, and there's some of us with a long history with Getty. We don't like Getty a lot because they used to absolutely try and blackmail companies left, right, and centre. And blackmail is my opinion. Let's put it that way. I'm not outright stating that they have done blackmail.
Maybe strong arming or being very assertive.
But they have bought companies and bought stuff retrospectively, knowing that lots of people are using it, and then hit everybody that's using it. And funny enough, they don't seem to hit the big companies that can afford lawyers. They always pick on the small guys.
Of course.
And that's the perspective that I'm coming at this with. So, in my opinion, purely my personal opinion, first, my absolute right to a personal opinion, Gettysburg are scum-sucking bastards. So, that out of the way.
No, but Gettysburg is a town in Pennsylvania, so I wouldn't...
Not the town, just the image.
Okay, good.
Not even the battle. The battle was okay, you know. If you
The battle was okay. The Union lost, but it was a turning point in the war. So,
So yeah, stock images, it's cheap, but it's bad. I'd rather the owner put up a doodle by their 5-year-old kid if it was actually original and interesting and could be part of the voice of this company. You know, if you ran a nursery, getting the kids to draw some of the images that were used on the site would be absolutely spot on.
well, when I get my daycare center, when we get big enough, I'll produce those.
Yeah.
If they want their graham crackers and milk, they're going to have to draw for the company.
Things that you've taken on your iPhone, your Android phone, whatever, I think are better options than stock photography every single time. And the next up from that, if you want something that's beyond your reach, commission. You know, it's often worth it for. You'd usually outsource your logo, and you'd go to a logo designer, somebody who knows what they're doing. Well, if an image is important on your site, rather than just a throwaway, I again think it's worth getting a professional job, something that you're going to own all the way through. And your written content, that's even more important. You know, this
brings up the question: do I engage my ex-wife, who's a photographer, or not? That's a real sticky wicket.
Well, she taught you a lot, so
She did. I mean, I was the photographer's assistant at weddings and things like that.
You've got that voice in the back of your head sometimes anyway when you're doing photography these days.
That's right. It's like Krisichka, bring this lens. Not this lens, that lens.
Yeah, so it's some of those things you want to be doing. I think professional is great, personal is great, and anything which is neither of those two things is probably a bad choice.
Gotcha.
Because it's not saying anything about your company, it's just there for the sake of being there. I'd rather not have an image in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Is
the same thing true of white space, and rather than trying to fill a page with things, just to allow sufficient space? Or maybe that's the province of the designer.
It is, but white space can be incredibly important. It's the pacing. It's the equivalent of pausing between sentences, or the way that speaking slowly in something can really get a point across. So that's what white space is doing. When it's all in a rush and it's real flow, stream of consciousness kind of stuff, it sometimes loses a lot of that meaning. Words are still there, but you haven't given them the ability to resonate. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of white space, but you can do a certain amount of that just in an ordinary text editor, just by hitting return twice instead of once.
And doing bullet points as opposed to having multiple paragraphs of really long sentences.
Yeah. Good point there from Vivek as well. He says if your content is going to be targeted internationally, make sure you don't use phrases that only Americans can appreciate. Americans don't own the world, Christopher Vogelmann. I don't know why he's picking on you particularly there.
I think that I made some comment about India not being a good place to get my content written, so maybe that's the problem. But no, Americans may not own it.
If you're targeting an Indian market, get an Indian copywriter.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure I've seen a few.
I would have the .in site for Epic Win Systems. So.
Epic W.
The thing that does surprise me sometimes is, that India hasn't absolutely dominated the internet. It's got so many scientists, it's got the tech. There is no country that puts out those intelligent minds as fast as India does. But as I've said once or twice before in other places, their education system seems to kill creativity. It seems to create this is the way it must be done, and it produces this sort of factory line approach to everything. Even their PhDs, the students have put out like a production line. And it's a real shame, because you would have expected with the amount of staff that Google have over there, with the amount of their research, Google's research that is done in India, you would have thought that India would have been doing it for themselves. But somehow that independence, that spark of creativity just doesn't seem to be there. And that's a shame.
Yeah, we have so many brilliant engineers and designers and developers here in the U.S. from India. And it's almost like they're given permission to be freer in their thought, more creative.
Yeah, yeah. It is partly that. Outsourcing is always one of, especially offshore outsourcing, is one of those things that everyone really struggles with. I have trouble with it because I'm a marketer, and India does not have a great record of marketing. It sometimes is still a country where their idea of marketing is, I have this, you buy this, you want this, you buy this. That's it. The subtlety isn't there sometimes. And you know, with copy, with sales copy especially, that really doesn't work. And the Philippines, kind of the same. Maybe as it becomes more of a first world economy, it'll have more of the first world problems and more of the first world imagination. But right now, it doesn't seem to quite be there, and it's a shame because it is quite a poetic culture. It just doesn't seem to translate well into copywriting right now.
I think that's just a time for some evolution. I think over time you'll see changes made.
Yeah.
So anyway, so with respect to outsourcing, there's both the risk and reward of doing that.
Yes.
I think it sounds riskier than rewarding.
If it's something technical and you know exactly what you want, you can specify it precisely. I don't think there's any harm in outsourcing, whether that's India, Asia, the Eastern Europe. There are some highly skilled technical people out there all over the world. It's a world market, and code is code is code.
Right. I mean, the logo for Epic, not for Epic Win, but for another company that I have, actually the winner of a contest that I did, Kate, was Bulgarian. So, and she's an amazing designer, but happens to be Bulgarian, living in London. So.
Yeah, and when it comes to databases, some of the Eastern Europeans are some of the very best in the world, just as some of the Indians are some of the very best programmers in the world.
Absolutely.
So it's certainly worth outsourcing those kind of projects, but again, you need to know exactly what you want. You need to be upfront about what is required, exactly what is required, and how to make sure you get it, and just do the assessment thing. The same as you would if you were outsourcing, you know, into somebody in your local town. They've got to know what you want exactly, and that's the best way to be sure of getting it.
Well, and that's like in the software business, building the platform. One of the things that I do know is that the contacts whom I've made over the last 18 months or so also have teams of people whom they tap into for development work, and most of those people are in Asia or the Middle East or, you know, Eastern Europe, as you say before. And it's very interesting because whereas in the U.S. I would look at a developer costing probably between $150,000 to $180,000, and that's if I can find them in Silicon Valley, if Google hasn't snapped them up already. Whereas in, say, central Pennsylvania, I may have mentioned that last week, I have friends who would get a full-time developer for $50,000 to $60,000. Perhaps further out in Eastern Europe, someone you might have for full-time for $24,000 a year.
Yeah.
So you do need to be economical in terms of working with your budget, and at the same time, you don't want to be cheap about it, but you also don't want to overpay.
Yeah. Also, this is where the classic old marketing thing of including place in the whole business plan can actually pay off. If I was setting up a software company, I would be tempted to set it up in India because I have a huge pool of talent to recruit from, and I'm right there to manage them. to make sure that this is producing what I want. In terms of, you know, being able to ship, in terms of being able to get the right talent in, being in India wouldn't be a very bad thing at all. It would make a lot of sense. Otherwise, you know, Eastern Europe could be very, very practical, and it might be the better place to be. And sometimes you do have to think of these things and say, yeah, where I am, I can get people, but it's going to cost me 3 times as much as if I was there. And if that's a big part of your business, then that's something that should have been planned for in your business. It could be that the proper thing is to have that business based where the talent is.
Eastern Europe has become very expensive as well. I've been trying to set up an office over there for the last year, but it is very, very expensive. You've got to go know the right people and get the right places quickly.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, some of it is cheaper than other parts.
Yeah.
I would imagine Bulgaria is less expensive than the Czech Republic, for example.
I believe so, yes. And Croatia was, of course, changing its economy very, very rapidly.
Yeah, that's where we're setting up a new office.
I think at the moment Croatia's quite reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got contacts over there. That's where we're setting up an office, and it is. Because they've just joined the EU as well, of course, all the prices, they triple. And there's a lot of Chinese buying everything up, so they're putting the prices up as well. And then a lot of Germans and a lot of English tourists buying holiday homes. So again, we're just ruining everything.
Yeah, there are certainly things that are very worthwhile thinking about. One of the core things that has made several companies, and it's not something you should forget, is that Amazon's ability to ship anywhere very quickly from centralized data, from centralized warehousing, is their business. You know, it's what kept it down. The fact that they had these super-sized warehouses made it cheaper to keep a whole load of stock.
Yeah.
Over here in the UK, Tesco was the first grocery store supermarket in the world to be able to reliably do nationwide deliveries. And those kind of things made their businesses, and you know, they've had years of success based on that. Understanding that there are many ways in which place is still going to affect a business is something that I think everybody needs to be aware of. And I'd almost say if you were building a content business where you had to have writers, it's the same sort of thing. Think how you're going to get them. Is the place you're in going to help? And sometimes that can be a virtual presence. So, you know, having a good reputation is going to make people want to aspire to be part of your team, which is where I think sites that allow too much user-generated content can fall down. The Huffington Post, for one example, or Forbes have both got user-generated content areas that I have heard several people say have diminished the brand for them. There's not enough control. There's not enough quality on there. Certainly, I think a lot of people have experienced in my industry the articles from Mozzers, the people inside Moz.com, tend to be better than the ones from the UMoz thing on average. But that said, there are some stellar quality posts that come up on UMoz. So it opens the door to it, but it can also diminish the overall reputation. It might be easier to think, right, where's a university that puts out a lot of people trained in journalism who aren't going to get jobs in journalism, and work from that. Let me see what Lee's got here.
Just something from Kevin about outsourcing. Is there any particular difference in content marketing capabilities and the strategy between US and Britain, for example?
Strategy-wise, not really. And in both countries, it's quite similar. We've got different styles of English. You know, it's the classic thing: two nations divided by a common language.
There's lots of extra U's, all those OUs.
This is a country where I often recommend companies to get an in-house writer as quickly as possible. Whether that's that they've already got somebody who's halfway there, uses Facebook a lot, and therefore can handle their social media and blogging, great. But I've often said, look, you've got a lot of students in a lot of universities who are doing literacy or language skills generally, who are yet to find out in a year or two that the only job that qualifies them for is sitting in a library. It's not a particularly valuable qualification these days, which is a sad thing. But yeah, a degree in English isn't going to get you very far. So the chances of working in becoming internet company, yeah, a lot of them will jump on that, certainly while they're students. It's a lot better than flipping burgers to help pay the bills while they're going through university. And you'll be surprised, a lot of them will actually want to stay with the company afterwards, especially if they've had an input into becoming the voice of that company.
That's actually quite intriguing because I have so many universities around me here in the DC area.
I think it would be worthwhile for you to look at doing that and getting somebody in, because then they can learn your style, they can learn the house style. In fact, they can even have input in it, and that way you get a definitive voice for the thing, and somebody who really appreciates the job. It's not just a job for them, it's, you know, it can become a calling, it can become a career. You get on and you work in other companies and things afterwards, you've got somebody you can call on all the way through. Outsourcing is very good, but I always think that long term insourcing is the way to go because it's going to be cheaper. I'm just catching up on the comments now. We seem to be pretty much there. Still a little bit of comments.
There are no cats over there at Lee's place, are there?
No, I'm here again.
Oh, good.
The power went off for a second.
Let's get on to frequency.
Frequency, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who say you need to, you know, post every week, or better still, you know, share on social media every single day. Rubbish. And times of day and stuff like that. Do you know what? If your audience is just your local town, worry about time of day.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got an international audience, whatever time of day it is for you, whatever time of day you think it is, it's a completely different time of day for somebody else anyway. There are times when it matters. Timing matters for something like a HOA. But even then, it's more about what's applicable. So this time slot that we're on is early morning for some of my friends over in Australia and New Zealand. It's middle of the day for a lot of my friends in America, and it's evening here, and that gets 3 of my major English-speaking markets.
And it's interesting you mentioned English-speaking markets, because in the business plan it's quite detailed as to going for 3 to 4 English-speaking markets. So what you're mentioning fits in very well with our long-term goals. Yeah.
So for a hangout, that matters. For a blog post, tweets, things like that, it's not as essential. I think it's worth... You retweet certain things anyway. If they're going to be important, you make sure you tweet them more than once. Thinking of your 3 major time zones, doing it so that each one gets one of those tweets during what's typically, you know, morning coffee time isn't a bad thing, and doing one sort of lunchtime isn't a bad thing. You could alternate those by those time zones, especially as they're quite a bit apart. It's 8 hours sort of thing. Other than that, really not. The thing with content is, it's great if you want people to come to your site often, if there's going to be fresh content there every single time. But if you're not a magazine type of site, if you're not a reading every day kind of site, if you're not doing journalism, that's not where you want to be. If you're trying to sell a product, that's really not what you're after. You can't compete with the Huffington Post and trying to make out that in people's minds you're going to be an alternative. Oh, I'll forget the BBC today. I'm going to check out White's widgets. It's not going to happen. Now, yeah, you can have real fans if you've got a quirky style. They may be checking once a week. But that's about the kind of level. Most people aren't going to be checking every day. They're going to see when something pops up in their stream, or at best when it goes out every week. And most of the time you really want to get your newsletter instead. It's the email that's going to keep in touch with people.
So I would imagine that a weekly post is probably sufficient for a company, as opposed, but a monthly would probably be far too long.
Monthly can work really well, especially as a roundup of several things you've done. It gives you that little bit more depth than just one article. So a monthly roundup can be a great thing, especially in an area like yours, which is an intellectual area. What's new in gamification in the last month is a really good little newsletter.
Right.
Whereas one blog post about it, it's one blog post. I'm going to like it or I'm not. I'm not sure if I'd sign up for notifications of occasional blog posts, but signing up for a monthly newsletter that let me know the best of the last month, yeah, that's got a high chance of getting me interested enough to keep up. Still going to be on your headlines and on your format each month, whether it keeps my interest, but I think that would be a very good way to go for that kind of product, where it's lots of things I'm going to want to know all around this space. What are some quirky uses that we haven't seen before? What's some deep uses? You know, that kind of thing on a monthly circle, that works great.
I do like the monthly roundup idea, yeah.
And especially one that can come through to their email. What I've talked about in the past is of doing a kind of magazine format. And treat your email notification as the first page of a big, good magazine. And it's telling them what articles are there, and they can click through. It's just got a teaser paragraph and a click through. Because again, you want them on your site. That's where you can track everything they're doing. That's where the page views are going to count. That's where the data is going back to Google. And that's where they can sign up for other things and see your advertising.
So the email newsletter essentially is in an HTML format with just a headline and a little teaser sentence and sort of like ... read more. They'll have to click through.
Enough to interest them.
Okay.
Think much more of, I'm trying to think of a magazine that probably does it. I think Vogue probably does have a lot of these magazines have sort of editor's page up the front, which is everything about that issue, and it gives you an idea of what articles are there. That's your email should be that one page.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of just giving them a page number, it's giving them a hyperlink to go straight through to that section. That's the kind of format you're going for with a monthly. I think if you get too much into the thing of, oh, I've got to post today, you will end up, A, driving yourself crazy with frustration doing it, and it becomes more and more unpleasant, and it becomes harder and harder to do. There are people who need that regularity. If they don't set themselves that goal, it's easy to just skip it altogether. You know, it's better to say, right, you've got to post once a week than to procrastinate and not post at all. But I wouldn't worry if it goes 2 months, but at the end of that 2 months you come up with a superb post. Now, so I'd set yourself time limits that you put into things, but I wouldn't worry about, you know, I have to post on Thursday every week.
What about the utility of using, say, I have, for example, in the wings, an app in the Apple and iTunes, and it is essentially an app for a news magazine that would be downloadable from iTunes. Is that something, and part of the newsstand, and eventually putting that out towards Android, is that something that's useful, or is that potentially a major distraction? Okay.
Sounds great. And again, it's all of these things, you know, reach out through every channel that you've got the time to do well, and think about that hub strategy. You know, make sure that all of them refer back to that hub wherever you can actually convert them best. Now,
well, the Apple Newsstand and the idea of a digital magazine is something that I would completely outsource. I mean, I would have input to that, but I want somebody else to assemble it and to get permission from other people to reproduce their content. So in many ways, it will be more of a curated content project and available on Android and Apple phones.
That can sometimes be a great time to work your network within a local chamber of commerce, or to work your network within a trade association. So either you do it through a trade association, and that trade association puts out a magazine which features all of its members, and it gives you all some extra traction. But then it's not just one company, it's doing something good for you all, but you get to outsource it that way. You've got more input there. Or a local chamber of commerce where lots of businesses that are related and in an area can do very well out of this. It lightens the load. It shares the load across, you know, several different people.
Or providing a platform for which thought leaders and others can actually promote their own material.
Yes.
Or is that a little tricky?
However, they are struggling with the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there that would generally be considered thought leaders that they want to save their best content for their own blog too. What they're putting out on others is interesting, but all they're trying to do is get people to their blog. Are you getting the same kind of quality that they're putting on their own site? A lot of the time you're not. Some of them you are, but most of the time you're not. And you can find that they're just very slightly rewriting the same article and they're putting it out in 3 or 4 different places. And I've seen some big names do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, names that quite disappointed me when I saw the quality of content they were putting out. So there's no easy win button on this.
I'm looking for the magic button.
Unfortunately, yeah, so's everybody else. And, yeah.
It's out in the garden with the money tree, isn't it?
So, certainly, you know, one of the things, you've got a WordPress formatted site. So one of the great strengths with that is that people don't have to be trained in HTML to produce content. So it does make outsourcing that kind of creation very easy. If you can type in Word, you can type in WordPress. It's that easy to format stuff. It's that easy to publish and things like that. The lessons they'll need to know, very, very simple. Everything's very easy to do. So it's a great way of being able to outsource content. If you've got a small business, you know, the person who does the reception desk can also be doing your blogging. They don't need specialist training. They don't have to have gone to university. I do think they need a certain amount of talent, though. They need a natural bent towards it. But yeah, you know, find that thing, and if that doesn't work, like I say, hit the local universities. There's a lot of people who are doing some pretty rubbish jobs to get through university, and the chances of doing a good one instead, yeah, they would love it, you'd love it, and you're getting some people who are really top-class talent who may decide to stick with you in the long term.
And it may be a resume builder for them too, having practical work experience. Should they not?
Absolutely is. Yeah.
It's like an internship, if you will. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
But paid.
Yeah, but the thing is, in some countries, of course, the government still gives you grants to be taking people who are at university as basically their work experience as well. So it can actually be beneficial all around. You can actually sometimes find that the government is giving you a grant and paying a certain percentage of their wages, which is making them very cheap. It's giving them that work experience. It's helping them put their learning into a context, and at the end of it, they still quite often find that, you know, these jobs aren't out there where they wanted them, and they've enjoyed this. Why not stick with it?
Engage them for undying loyalty. So.
Yeah, it goes a long way. I've seen this with SEO companies. A couple of the agencies I've worked with there, we did bring in students from the universities. Sometimes it was, you know, people doing art, and we'd give them a chance to do graphics within the company. Sometimes it was in the development side, and occasionally it was in the SEO side. A lot of students these days are using Facebook and blogging and things like that anyway. So a lot of the time, even the students doing very different skills have that experience. And yeah, chance to work for a company that's doing something interesting instead of flipping burgers or doing shop work. Absolutely. Well, we're coming to the time when we really need to be wrapping up already. It's whizzed past this hour, actually. Sorry if we didn't get around to any of the questions that I was hoping to. If there's anything left in the comments, we'll be diving in there anyway. Meanwhile, let me hand it over to you guys to see what you're up to in the coming week. Christopher.
Well, I'm actually in the process of reconfiguring Epic Influencers, as I said before last week, into essentially behavioral design using influence to modify people's behavior with respect to behavioral economics. That's our word for today. And I'll be doing a lot of traveling in the coming weeks. I'll be off to China for a 5-day business trip and a few other things. So Epic Influencers will probably not be coming back again until October, but just in time for Halloween and trick or treat. I'm assembling my team, making sure that they are aware of the suggestions that you've made today, as well as in last week's show. And we should look for a much improved website with greater content and more fresh content in the weeks to come.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah. It really is important that the website lives the principles that you're talking about. You know, it's got to be fun, it's got to be engaging, it's got to be sticky and great and epic. You know, that's
and a victory
yes.
for people.
Yes, it needs the epic win, and
right.
Yeah,
it's turned out lately with a number of different challenges to be the epic won't.
Lee, what are you up to this week?
On Tuesday, we've got our regular weekly UK Biz Hangouts 40 seconds round, which is turning out to be quite fun, actually. We didn't know how it was going to go, but that's on Tuesday night. Just check my stream and you find out more details. Other than that, I just realised it's the end of the month and I've got work to do.
Nice planning there. You've just realised it's the end of the month.
Yeah.
In the nick of time.
Yeah, a couple of days to go.
Well, it's Susie on Tuesday for me, of course. But the big one, of course, is that my 3 messages are: don't miss next week because we have Mia Voss on, and that's going to be a very interesting one. I'm still not certain what we're talking about next week, so it's going to be good. I know it's going to be good.
It's an epic
second
win.
one is, of course, as usual, and as I pointed out in this video, if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel, hit that you like this video. It all helps me get the message out and get more people onto the show in future. And thirdly, thank you very much for watching. So that's it for this week. Take care, everyone.